The salt-heavy wind from the ocean carried the scent of wild jasmine and sea moss, wrapping around Annabelle as she stood alone on the balcony of their sprawling cliffside home in Somerset Hills. The sunset stained the clouds burnt orange and violet, but peace evaded her. After 17 years of marriage, she should have felt secure, but something gnawed at her, a hollow feeling that she just could not name. Annabelle at 42 was striking, not in the loud way of magazine covers, but in the quiet, dignified strength that came from surviving life's hidden battles. She had built a successful art business, raised two beautiful daughters, and poured her heart into creating a home filled with warmth. And yet, over the past years, James, her tall, charismatic husband with an easy smile and infectious laugh, had begun to feel like a stranger to her. It started with the late night calls, then the sudden weekend business trips, the vague explanations, the password on devices they had once shared freely. There was a new scent on his clothes, not a faint musk of cologne she bought him, but something softer, floral. It was unfamiliar. Annabelle tried to reason with herself. Maybe he's just tired. The business world is ruthless. The economy is bad. He's under pressure. People pull away sometimes. That doesn't mean that they stop loving you. She recited those excuses like a quiet prayer, hoping they would silence the growing ache in her chest. She watched James as he fidgeted with his phone at dinner, giving absent-minded nods and forced smiles while she spoke. The man she once knew, who used to hang on her every word, who would reach across the table just to brush her hand, now seemed miles away even when sitting right beside her. But no matter how many justifications she layered over her unease, the shadows in her mind thickened. Doubts slithered into the quiet moments, in the hush before dawn. Every unexplained call, every odd financial transaction, every strange, fleeting scent on his collar pulled at her intuition like a loose thread unraveling everything she thought was certain. She told herself that good men sometimes make mistakes, that marriages had rough seasons, but her heart knew better. There's a kind of emptiness that no logic can fill, and in that growing silence between them, she felt the cold truth pressing closer. Her instincts whispered what her mind refused to say aloud. Something was wrong, and it was not going away. It was then that fortune revealed a hidden clue. The universe left a breadcrumb for her to find. One rainy Tuesday evening, as thunder rolled in the distance and the wind rattled the window panes, James left the house in a hurry, claiming he had an urgent meeting. In a rush, he left a key card on his study desk. It read Suite 308, Ivy Manor Hotel. Her stomach flipped. She knew that place, an exclusive hotel known for discretion and wealthy clientele. The next morning, with a shaking hand and a racing heart, Annabelle booked a room at the Ivor Manor. She waited, hour after aching hour, and at exactly 7:13 p.m. James arrived, but he was not alone. On his arm was Madeline Grant, a slender woman with striking auburn hair and a smile that now made Annabelle's skin crawl. She was a family friend, the same Madeline who attended their barbecue, who had sat at their dining table and praised Annabelle's cooking, a woman who had brought wine to Annabelle's birthday party just 6 months ago. But it got worse. Later that evening, Annabelle followed them quietly. From a hidden vantage point, she overheard bits of their conversation, and what she heard turned her stomach to stone. James was not just having an affair. He and Madeline were laundering money through his investment firm, but worse, they were using Annabelle's business accounts as unknowing fronts filtering fraudulent payments through her gallery sales and fake invoices. She was the unknowing accomplice in a federal crime. What began as a nagging suspicion about her husband James' late nights and secretive phone calls had exploded into something far darker than Annabelle could have imagined. The man she shared a home with, a life, and years of memories with wasn't just unfaithful, he was dangerous. Heart pounding, Annabelle took photos, recorded conversations, and retreated to her hotel room with a mind spinning in disbelief. Each scrap of evidence she collected chipped away at the denial she clung to. James was not just meeting another woman, he was part of a tangled web of fraud, embezzlement, and deceit. The bank statements did not lie. The overheard conversation at the back of the restaurant, murmured in coded language, was not innocent. Annabelle had unknowingly signed documents, transferred funds, and attended meetings with the belief that she was helping with his business, only to realize she had been used. The betrayal was not just about romance or his unfaithfulness. The betrayal was criminal, and in a way, that hurt even more. Love could fail, hearts could break, but this was a calculated abuse of her trust. Her name, her reputation, her safety had been placed at risk. If authorities came knocking, she would not be viewed as a grieving, betrayed wife, but a willing participant. Now the wreckage was not just emotional, it had legal consequences looming in its shadows. The space around her tightened, the gloom pressing in like a weight. The very air seemed heavier as the truth settled in. Annabelle was not just fighting for her heart anymore, she was fighting for her freedom. But rather than collapse, something primal woke up in her. And in the tense, sleepless days that followed, Annabelle moved with quiet, calculated precision. Her heart bruised, but her mind sharpened by betrayal. Gone was the woman who had made excuses for James. Now she was a woman who planned. Her first step was to consult a discreet lawyer, someone connected to James's circle of influence. In a dimly lit office downtown, Annabelle laid bare the tangled mess of lies, infidelity, and criminal suspicion. The lawyer, seasoned and sharp, advised immediate action. Without hesitation, Annabelle froze their joint accounts, cutting off James' access to shared finances. It was a bold, irreversible move, one that made her both nervous and quietly exhilarated. Next, she began to unravel herself from the invisible threads binding her to James' world. She secretly moved her name from all business ties, including the shell companies and partnerships that James had coaxed her into joining over the years, many of which she now suspected were covers for his illegal deals. Knowing that the danger ran deeper than what she could see, Annabelle hired a forensic accountant, a specialist in following the shadowy trails left by those who believed they were too clever to be caught. Every transaction, receipt, and offshore record was scrutinized. What they uncovered made her stomach turn. Hidden assets, falsified invoices, and large cash withdrawals disguised as consulting fees. But Annabelle was not done. Determined to keep her involvement hidden until the right moment, she filed a police report anonymously, laying out the framework of James' illegal dealings, using carefully gathered evidence to shield herself from retaliation while tipping off the authorities. Then came a stroke of strategy. She reached out to Marcus Tate. He was James' former business partner, a man who had mysteriously disappeared from the company after a heated fallout between them. Marcus, once betrayed and pushed aside under suspicious circumstances, had been quietly waiting for a chance to settle the score. Annabelle's call wasn't just a lifeline for herself, it was an opportunity for Marcus to legally strike back. And together they began building a case, combining Marcus's insider knowledge with Annabelle's growing cache of proof. Each step was measured, each move purposeful. Annabelle, once emotionally paralyzed, was now a woman reclaiming her life, piece by piece, name by name, asset by asset. The shadow of deception no longer intimidated her. She was learning to move within them, using the very darkness that nearly destroyed her as a shield and a weapon. Together, they compiled a file thick enough to sink him. And then Annabelle did something that would haunt James forever. She hosted a charity gala at their home. All the usual faces arrived, including James and Madeline. Annabelle wore a sleek, deep emerald gown and a calm, radiant smile. She was the picture of elegance and quiet power. As the evening's speeches began, Annabelle took the microphone. She thanked everyone for attending. Then she announced a surprise. The massive screen behind her came alive with shifting images. It was surveillance footage from Ivy Manor, the hotel where James would meet with his mistress and where they conducted their shady business dealings and had their romantic escapades. The video exposed confidential documents, financial statements, and photographs of their illegal activity. There was unease throughout the room. James turned deeply pale, and Madeline, she fled. When it was over, Annabelle simply said, "Some things rot from the inside." It was time to clean house. The police arrived 10 minutes later. In the aftermath, Annabelle did not feel broken. She felt renewed. At first, the weight of betrayal felt suffocating. Her home echoed with an eerie emptiness, the kind you only notice when the lies are gone. But amid the rubble, Annabelle made a choice. This would not be the end of her story. It was the beginning. She began therapy, where the walls she had carefully built around herself started to crumble. In tearful, vulnerable sessions, she unpacked years of silent sacrifices and quiet unhappiness. She spoke of how she had dimmed her own light to keep James shining, how she had learned to live small, to swallow her disappointments, to ignore the gnawing ache of being unseen. It was there, on that familiar, worn couch in her counselor's office, that she finally acknowledged how long she had been lost to herself. Eager to surround herself with women who understood, she joined a private support group, a safe haven for those blindsided by infidelity and betrayal. Each story, though different in detail, echoed her own heartache. They laughed through the tears, shared wine and war stories, celebrated tiny victories like sleeping through the night or smiling at a stranger. It was in this tribe of resilient, battle-worn women that Annabelle rediscovered something she had not felt in years. It was belonging. Then, on a quiet evening, scrolling through travel blogs, she booked a solo trip to Morocco, a destination she had once dreamt of but never dared. Alone in the bustling markets of Marrakesh, she wandered among jewel-colored textiles and spices that perfumed the air. She allowed herself to get lost in the maze of narrow streets, negotiating for handmade trinkets and watching life unfold in vibrant, unapologetic color. At dawn, she rode a camel into the desert, watching the sun rise in a burst of pink and orange across the endless hills. There, in that vast silence, Annabelle met herself again. Fierce, curious, alive. When she returned home, something had shifted. She dusted off her old frame and opened the doors to her long neglected art studio. Each brush stroke became an act of release. Her pain poured out in deep reds, burning oranges, stormy blues, and soft, hopeful yellow. She created a new collection she named Reborn from Ruins, raw, unapologetic pieces reflecting betrayal, loss, survival, and rebirth. The collection was not just art, it was a visual diary of her healing. When she finally launched it, the response was overwhelming. The collection sold out within days, with art galleries and private collectors praising the honesty, strength, and beauty in her work. Women reached out thanking her for putting their unspoken feelings onto canvas. Annabelle's financial independence was no longer a fragile hope, it was reality. But more than that, her soul was her own again. She no longer chased validation. She no longer asked permission to exist fully, boldly as herself. What James tried to break, life helped her rebuild, not as the woman she was, but as the woman she was always meant to be. And in the most poetic turn, Annabelle bought a new home overlooking the very cliffs where she once stood in doubt, a space filled with soft light, wild flowers, and the scent of salt and jasmine. She adopted a stray greyhound named Valor and filled her days with music, ocean swims, and art. She was no longer Mrs. James Whittaker. She was Annabelle, whole, unapologetic, and free. If this video interested you in any way, I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe, like, leave a comment, and share. By doing this, your action will really help my channel to grow. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.